Most will argue that student athletes should not be paid, but I'm here to argue that student athletes shouldn't be paid. They devote a lot of time and work to their craft and their sport. To many of them, it's far more than just a hobby. For many, it's a getaway and it's an escape from impoverished areas. Um, for others, it is a gateway to a professional career that they have always wanted. And for some, it's just because they were good at a sport. And it's all okay because one day it can lead to a professional level. And that is the ultimate goal. Me being an athlete, that was one of my ultimate goals before I chose my education over being an athlete. And I think that's okay to do. But again, if I were to have continued to be a student athlete in college, I would have argued that I should have gotten paid for my craft. Um, According to Forbes.com, Division One football players devote on average 43 hours a week for their chosen sport, which is a little bit more than the average American who works. The average American works around 40 hours in a workplace a week. If they're spending over 40 hours devoted to their sport, an average of about 17 hours devoted to the homework and the school related activities, it leaves them with little time to work or to do anything. I know most people personally who are student athletes, and they wake up at about 5 o'clock in the morning and they go through nonstop activities all throughout the day that's planned on an itinerary, and they do not see their dorm room until about 10 o'clock or later at night, and they even have a curfew sometimes around about 11 or 12 o'clock at night. um, Events like March Madness pull in millions of dollars every year. We see it on TV every single year with sponsorships from Papa John's or AT&T or other companies like that. They make a lot of profit off of these players in the tournament and sell their names, their jerseys, and anything like that in order to get more viewers and to get more revenue generated by the players. Perfect example of that this year was Zion Williamson. I'm sure that a lot of people, especially around the University of South Carolina, went to the March Madness game in order to see Zion Williamson. So another thing here is that we have the arguments against why student athletes shouldn't be paid. Many will argue that if college students were to be paid, who are athletes, then that would take away money from facilities and coaches. Now, this can be a little tricky because, as we know, coaches are paid based on their performance, and they are based on a salary that has some bonuses as well, depending on what they do throughout their years as a coach. Nick Saban is the highest paid coach currently for the University of Alabama, and most of his salary has come from the fact that he has won national championship games for multiple seasons, and so has Dabo Swinney of the University of Clemson. He has also generated a high contract as well. Jim Harbaugh of Michigan Wolverines, he is another high paid coach. But they have millions of dollars. If you take a little bit of that and a little bit of the money out of the boosters and a little bit of money away from the administrators and the facilities, then a small percentage of that can go to the players as a paycheck. And that doesn't take away that much money. So they wouldn't really be lacking in that area if they were to take out a little bit of the revenue from there. Another argument is that if colleges were to pay their athletes, there wouldn't be enough money to go around as far as the athletes themselves. So the way that we can kind of change that is if we look at it a little bit based off of performance and a little bit based off of the itinerary and scheduling they have to go through. So another thing is that with the facilities and coaches, I found an article from Business Insider from Court Gaines and Cheyenne Gal that says that colleges and universities with big time college football programs spend more on salaries and compensation for all of their athletics coaches than they do on student athlete scholarships. and financial aid. That is something that is huge because a lot of people will say that every athlete gets a scholarship or every athlete gets some sort of aid when that is not indeed the case. Another case of this was with EA Sports when they had their issues with taking players' likenesses and putting in their heights, weights, eye color, everything that you can think of into the game. Although they didn't put their names on their jerseys to signify that it was that player. They did all of that. And they were sued by multiple athletes. Currently, the lawsuit is up to 200,000 students, former college football players, and they are still in the works of figuring out a settlement for it, but it's very close to the end of that case. Another misconception is that all athletes receive enough help from boosters and scholarship funding to make up the gap from, and this is weird, but they talk about students from impoverished areas making up the gap to non-impoverished athletes. This isn't the case for every single roster for every single sport. As a matter of fact, Division I, Division II schools provide more than $2.9 billion in athletic scholarships annually to more than 150,000 students. Division III schools don't even give out athletic scholarships, which is another problem within itself. However, about 2% of high school athletes are awarded an athletic scholarship to compete in college. Only 2%. And when you think about it on another small scale, when you sign the National Letter of Intent is when you are legally eligible by the NCAA to receive any sort of aid. And only 48,000 students or so receive a National Letter of Intent offer that they can sign as a student athlete coming out of high school. And there are over 460,000 student athletes, which is a record high according to the NCAA. So student athletes should be paid, and I don't think it's really that much of a question. As a question of how much, it shouldn't be much. It should be a little more than a stipend, and I feel as though it should be a little bit based on salary. And it is up to some of the schools who generate the revenue based off of the sporting event. I would think that if the football program makes a high amount of money, then they should be able to do so and pay their athletes according to the amount of money that they're generating. Thanks for watching.